Hello, welcome back to Trail Buddy. Tonight we're going to tackle the majority of our electrical components. We're going to mount our top plate. We're going to buff that out, get that looking nice. We'll go over some tricks that we use for this. We're going to get our handlebars mounted and connect the majority of our connections up in our headlight bucket. So we'll get started. All right, onto our top plate. So before you get started, the two things you really got to check out is the upper and lower sides where the handlebars mount. So often these guys get cracked. They'll be right in the little break radius corner here on the top sections or the bottom. So you just want to check that out, make sure there's no cracking. You also want to make sure that your threads are good here to where your little knob mounts go. They're kind of like an end cap, a plug, kind of. But you want to make sure these threads are good. I know these are good because I disassembled that, but if you get this in a box of parts, you don't know what you got, just look for that. So I'm going to use a Scotch-Brite wheel to buff this. We'll probably finish off with Scotch-Brite pads to blend everything in to make it look good. Our goal for this is kind of a nice, rough, semi-polish. These were never like a high-end gloss polish from Honda, so we're going to try to make this look semi-original for our build, but that's what you're going to be inspecting when you go over your top plate. So it took a few minutes. We were at the grinder with our Scotch-Brite wheel. Now be careful of the Scotch-Brite wheels because what our goal is here is just to knock off the oxidation and get this to be a nice uniform appearance. So I went around all the top surfaces. I was careful not to actually cut because you can cut with those wheels. And I'm just lightly going over the surfaces just to knock off the oxidation of the aluminum. So now I've got cut up one of my burgundy Scotch-Brite pads here. So we'll start with the rougher, and we're going to go over the whole top of this surface to make it uniform and blend all the surfaces in. Then I'm going to finish with my gray Scotch-Brite, which is kind of like sandpaper, like starting with a, I don't know, 400 grit and then finishing with maybe like an 800 per se. It's more of a guideline here, but we'll go over this surface here and we'll buff it up and we'll see how good we can make it look. Onto our top plate and mounting all of our parts. So we're going to check to make sure we've got our first jam nut here to the tension we want. And we've got our top plate all polished. We've got all the oxidation off. So we're going to kind of temporarily mount this because we don't have our fork assemblies ready yet. We'll get this mounted. We've got our remainder of our triple tree nut kit here. So we've got our hard washer and our nice chrome acorn nut. Get that on. So for now, I'm just going to leave this semi-loose because I'm going to want to take this off when I get the cartridges just to make sure I've got everything aligned right. For now, for putting the handlebars on, we're going to keep this as a placeholder and something we can actually mount our handlebars to. So I think the next item that we'll pop in here is we'll get our speedometer in. First, I want to make sure that I've got my headlight bucket tight. So for a headlight bucket, I have nylock nuts in the inside. I've got nice flange bolts on the outside. So I'm just trying to tighten it enough to where I can still just adjust the headlight. And I'm getting good drag on these fasteners here. There. Okay, we'll take our speedometer and we will get this ready for installation. So we have a aftermarket engine in our resto mod here. So what we need to do is we need to take these little sockets out and we need to change these light bulbs to 12 volt units. So we have our 12 volt replacement instrument bulb. So these, you can find these on our website. And these are the ones you're going to replace with and remove our 6 volt units. because they'll get real bright and then they'll just not be bright anymore and pop. So we'll put these in the sockets. Get loaded up. So on our headlight, or excuse me, our speedometer going into our headlight bucket, one thing to note is which socket wire goes into what hole. So for our, we got our backlight, and then we have our high beam indicator. So our backlight needs to go in the center, and our high beam indicator will go to kind of my left here, the one off to the side. So we'll install that and we'll get it in. We'll put the little rubber covers, keep the moisture out. All right, now we'll get this installed. So the trick for this is it's got this little clip here. You're going to make sure that clip goes in first and pinch the top piece and just gently push down and it'll pop right into place. So we've got, so now our headlight bucket becomes our junction box. So all of our connections will be made in here. The aftermarket wire harness has got kind of extra connections on it, so it's going to get a little full. So I just want to make sure we're doing our wire management the best we can. So that way when we go to put our headlight bucket in, we're not disconnecting anything and or shorting anything out. So if you've made any custom connections in here, you really want to make sure you've got covers on them and or you want to put maybe some black tape around on it. So now that we've got that in, we'll move on to our handlebars and put all of our switches on so we can run those cables into the headlight bucket and make our correct connections. Onto the handlebars. So for these, we have our replacement handlebar knobs. So this bike came with one and we were missing the other. So we will use our aftermarket set for the installation. So we have our left and right handlebar, and we've got our handlebar knob. So for our handlebar knobs, these are the ones we have a little extra long to go for both ears, but you want to make sure you get your lock washer, split washer, spring washer. They've got lots of names. You want to make sure you get that on. And before I forget, we took our little metal units off here to polish and clean that up. You want to make sure that when you're doing these parts and pieces that you do not try to buff these metal parts unless you plan on getting them re-zinced, because they will rust instantly when it gets any kind of moisture on that metal. Because what you're doing is you're taking off all the protective coating, the zinc coating, off of the metal part when you go to try to polish it. All right, we get these tightened up. Now, on the handlebars, they've got what we are going to want to refer to as kind of a taper lock. Now, the gap in here should be pretty tight. Mine probably has roughly around maybe an 1/8 inch, just under. And that's so these don't wiggle. So if you had a flat spot, you can imagine you're not really clamping or tightening anything. So these should have a taper lock, and they should actually have a little bit of a gap right here between the two, and they should lock nicely on that. This is called a taper lock. So let me get my other knob set up. So these are some nice aftermarket handlebars that we have as prototypes. So we will check how these fit. We're kind of doing a test fit in the video. but we're kind of verifying these to see how good they are, if they're good enough to be on our site. All right, we got those good and tight. Now for our remaining electrical components, we've got our electric start we need to hook up, and we have our horn button and our dimmer switch. Those guys, the dimmer switches, we got to snake them through our bars here and out through the grommets. This one will probably run parallel with the handlebar, and we won't try to put it through inside the handlebar. I'm going to get those set and mounted. On to putting our high-low beam switch in. This is a little bit of a bear. Not too bad, but a couple different methods you can do to put this and fish this through. So the top hole here is going to be our mounting hole for our boss. Now this is included. It does have the little washer and the little itty-bitty screw that goes in that. So that'll get mounted like so. And our wires need to go into this elongated hole towards the bottom. So for fishing those through, whatever is easiest for you, you can use kind of a fish tape wire, bring that up through, tape these onto that, pull it back. It's kind of cumbersome because the tape gets a little bit thicker. I like to kind of use a pick, and I've got a real fine needle nose. So we'll fish these guys through the bottom of that slotted hole. We'll get it to where I can see my first wire. And I will grab that guy and push it down a good ways. So that way I can see the rest of my wires. And I'll just grab my little pick here, and I will gently pull this wire through to where I can just grab it and then pull the end through. Our last one. This is a little bit tougher. This newer handlebar has got a little bit of burrs in there, but that is that. So we're going to push and pull at the same time to feed these through until we get that to where it needs to be. So that is fishing the wires through the handlebar. We'll grab our fastener. We've got our little itty bitty screw. If I haven't lost it yet, it's super tiny, so make sure you keep that in a nice spot. We'll get this mounted. It kind of goes through the perch lever on the opposite side. So it's kind of hidden, kind of neat. The horn is pretty much the same way, except the hole that the horn mounts in also accepts the wire. This one has the elongated hole below it, so just something to note. Save yourself some time. And don't run, or for this one, don't try to run it through this hole at first, because there's a little slotted one towards the bottom. All right, so I found this is kind of easy. You put the fastener on the end of the screwdriver, grab your finger and kind of hold it on. Hold that in place, get this through the screw. So what's tricky about this one is you've got this boss that's threaded in the inside. So it's kind of tough to get it started. So what I've learned over the years is I will put the fastener in the hole to the backside, and I can feel that I'm pushing out my switch, and then I'm in the center and I've started my threads. We'll tighten this guy down. Got it. All right, so we will route this towards the inside and through into the headlight bucket through that top hole. We run our connections through that way. Next, got our horn switch. So the horn switch has the fastener already installed. If not, it's loose in the bag. And this is also a real tiny guy. So do not lose this guy either. I'm going to put this in a rag that I've got on the tabletop so it doesn't run away from me. This one's a lot easier to fish through because we only got one wire we need to really contend with. Sometimes I will make a bend, and that will work as I'm pushing it through. Before we finish our connections in our headlight bucket, we've got to remember to put our rubber grommets on. They go onto this wire package here for the high-low, and to the right side, we've got our horn and we've got our throttle that are both going to go through these grommets. So the left side we'll be able to finish up with our nice little zip tie. And the throttle side we got to leave loose because we don't have our throttle assembly in yet. So we'll get this fished on. For now, we will run that into our headlight bucket so we can make our connection. Pull that through. I'm just going to shove it in there right now so I don't forget about it. Nice thing about new OEM parts is these rubber pieces are actually pliable. They're not hard as a rock like ones that would be, oops, if they were old original ones. All right, good enough for now. This is going to be the tougher side because we've got to put a larger diameter wire package through the grommet. Fishing all the wires in and pulling it up to the top. That last little bit that's hard to get into that hole. Careful not to pierce the rubber piece. So I've got this little awl here that I was using to fish the wires through. I'm pressing in that grommet on the back side, making sure I've got it seated and in. All right, we're seated. We'll route our last wires through here for the high-low beam. All right, we've got that in the headlight bucket. We've got our horn switch in the headlight bucket. The last thing we've got to do is our starter switch. So we will put this on the left side, just for the fact that we won't get this confused with our horn accidentally. All right, I got that nasty little bracket mounted. It's fighting me the entire way. So we're fishing our wires through for our electric start button. There we go. And we'll finish it up with our white Honda wire tie. There we go. All right, that is our left side. Now we need to move on to our headlight bucket and make a connection with our big mess we have in there. So on to that. So to make sense of our big connection of wires here, it's not as daunting as it looks. So we've got our color key for our wire harness that we use. So our wire harness that we use is TB515. It's a simple wire harness that we added an electric start button to. So the electric start button won't be on this one, but all the other connections will be. You're also going to want to make sure that you've got your manual here or the wire schematic for that particular year bike. So this is year specific. So you're going to want this because this is another reference to know what colors that you're going to be working with that'll connect into the wire harness. So our schematic here tells us everything on the wire harness side, and our manual tells us everything that the OEM components are. So we know what function we've got in our wire harness, and we know what color they go to from our stock components. So you'll need this guy. Follow this through, and it won't be as bad as you think. All right, we're ready to wrap it up. The last thing we're going to do is mount our headlight assembly here temporarily. There's a couple connectors we're going to have to make later on, but at least we're going to put it in here, make sure everything fits, and we won't lose this or the parts and pieces. So one thing to note is we changed the whole assembly over to 12 volt. These come included with a 6 volt headlamp. So we need to take these out, put this one here in. This is our 12 volt unit. They look identical. They have it stamped on the side. So we'll get that installed. Now, when I took this thing apart, I fought with these things enough I put a little black marker line on there. I line it up because there's 3 different combinations you can do, and they're almost super close. We'll get this put in there. So I got my 2 black lines. Now, the installation of this is pretty straightforward. We've got a little hook here that catches on to the little tab inside the plastic headlight bucket, and there's a screw here that mounts it to the face. We're going to make sure we don't have any wires in our way. Now there's a ring here that we've got to make sure we've got concentric to our circle and our headlight bucket. So you might have to manipulate the plastic a little bit to get it to work. So we're going to tip it in, get it on. I'm going to make sure there's no wires protruding, getting in my way. And there, we've got it installed. Now I'm going to grab my screw, and hopefully I don't fight with this too much. We'll get this started. All right, I'm just going to get this finger tight for now, just so we don't lose the screw and that doesn't fall out on us. Make sure we're good. All right, that's our headlight bucket assembly. So now it's starting to look like a bike. It's starting to get fun. This is the fun stage where it starts looking like you got some stuff completed. But I hope you found this video informative. If you like what you see here, check us out on our website on mytrailbuddy.com. Hello, welcome back to Truddy. Scene.